Okay, now that we've made a few calls in our test survey here, let's have a look at um, what it looks like for the system administrator. They can have a look at how the survey is progressing. Um, what you can do is have a look under the results screen here. And this gives you an idea of, I guess, how the survey is progressing, but also details about that might help with scheduling interviewers in the future. So if we have a look at future appointments, this report tells us which appointments have been made. You can see here that for our case ID number 2, we've got an appointment on Thursday between 6 and 7. And obviously this list would include all appointments in the future. A missed appointment is where an appointment had been scheduled for a certain time and nobody called within that time. So that report is particularly useful when you're running a big project to see why people who have been scheduled to be called haven't been called. It might be a staffing issue. Okay, we can also have a look at what's called the sample call attempts report. So this is a summary of how the split of outcomes based on the number of calls made. So you can use this. It's particularly useful when you've made a lot of calls to your respondents. You want to see if there's value in calling people more than a certain number of times. So you'll note here this row has call attempts made 1, so we've only ever tried all cases only at least once. So if we had called people 2, 3, 4 times, you'd get more rows here. And you'd be able to see, based on the outcomes, whether it's really worth calling people maybe 4 or 5 times, depending on what outcomes you get. If you get a lot of completed outcomes in your later call attempts, then you can see there's some value in calling people more than multiple times. But if you're really just getting lots more no answers or no attempted or worked outcomes for your later call attempts, then you know it's probably not worth calling people lots of times. Okay, call history is really just a sequential list of all the calls made, and if there are any case notes made. This can be searched if necessary. You'll notice in a lot of these reports, in the future appointments report, call history report, and in others, that the case ID number is linked, and that brings you to this supervisor page here about assigning outcomes to cases, and I'll just show you what that looks like. So if I click on number 6 here, this screen gives us a summary of what a case looks like and gives us the option to manually make changes to it. So this case has been referred to the supervisor. You can see at 11:16 a.m. The operator called operator 1 referred it to the supervisor and left a note here that they're distrustful of the survey. If we think that it should just be assigned back to a regular operator to call, you can do that. Down here. If I want to assign it to operator 1, what will happen now is, regardless of the outcome, this operator will get the call next to be able to call them next. You can also add more case notes here if required, change the outcome of existing calls or the outcome of the current case. You can add an appointment manually if you like. So if your interviewers, for example, let you know that they'd made a mistake in coding a particular call, just ask them for the case ID number and go to the supervisor functions page, assign outcomes to cases and type in the case ID, and you can make the changes manually. Alternatively, if they've forgotten what case they're on, you can look at the results list, go to the call history, and you've got a good idea of what time they did it. Should be able to find the case from the list and make the changes that way. So that's another useful function of the call history list. Okay, a shift report. So again, we're going to choose our project. This is the shift we're currently on. Just allows you to write a note about that particular shift. This could be useful, for example, for referring back as to why the not many people were called, for example, or a lot of missed appointments. So this is one example of that the power went out. So we'll just add a report to that shift, and then for posterity you can see what happened when you're looking at the overall outcomes for the case. A quota report only applies if quotas are assigned. I can go through that at a different stage. Otherwise, we'll look at the overall questionnaire outcomes. And we don't have many calls here, but this gives you an idea of what the outcome rates look like. So you can see by the status of the sample, we had 42 numbers in total in the sample, which again, I'll just remind you looked like this. So that's right, there were 42 numbers here. We've drawn 7 numbers, so we've loaded 7 numbers out, and so all these counts now refer to the numbers that have been drawn from the sample, not that still remain. Okay, so these are the outcomes based on the 7 numbers that we've drawn. Oops. Yeah, we've got 1 not attempted, 1 no answer, 2 referred to the supervisor, 1 that's complete, 1 that's an appointment, and 1 that we've sent to for self-completion. The average time spent on a completed questionnaire. So we spent 42 seconds on our completion. And these are APOR response rates based on the number of drawn cases and the current number of completions. So yeah, 1/7 is about 14% current response rate. You can also now see completions by shift. And we can also look at operator performance, and that can be done either by clicking here, which would give us operator performance by shift, or an overall performance. So let's have a look by shift. Well, we can disable the shift performance here, but they'll be the same in this case because we've only got 1 shift so far. So we're saying overall that the operator number 1 has had 1 completion over 7 calls. They've spent 22 minutes in the system. 6 of those minutes were actually on a call. So we're currently doing 2.6 completions per hour. We're making about 18 calls per hour, and our effectiveness is 0.29. Effectiveness is how much time you're actually on a call while you're working or while you have a case assigned to you. So something to let your interviewers know. Make sure when you're on a case that you're making calls, that's your effectiveness. If you're not making any calls or you're not working, don't leave queXS open. Make sure to do end work so that it's not recording you as just sitting there doing nothing. Okay. The other thing that of course is important is getting access to your data. So that's under data output here. Now, data output uh, is available via Lime Survey because that's where the data, the actual collected data, is stored. But if you wanted to link the data collected with any sample information you have, so for example, the phone number is stored in queXS, but not in Lime Survey. You can download what what queXS calls a key file, and what that will do is, I'll just save that to show you what it looks like. What that will do is link by token the case ID information and all the sample information back. So it's called a key file because the key is the token. So this links back to what appears in Lime Survey. So if you want to see the data itself, you can click on this link here to bring us to the Lime Survey download data screen. Or you can browse there yourself, but just for simplicity, it's going to take us there automatically. Now you remember we only had one completed case, that's why we've got one full response. And just to show you what it looks like, display response here. You'll see, for those of you familiar with Lime Survey, it's as if someone had a participant record created for them, and then they have completed based on that participant record. So we've got our regular details, and here's the response data that was typed in, but instead it was typed in by the interviewer, not by the respondent themselves.